Welcome to July's technical meeting. Thank you guys for attending. Before we get started, I wanted to just say thank you to everybody who made our group camp happen this year. We just finished that up last week, and I threw a couple pictures of the project that I was on, but we had a ton of really awesome projects. The guys from Southeast were instrumental in making this happen, and Wade and Brad and Dalton did a ton of work. I really just showed up this week and got to work on a house and had a lot of fun. But anyway, I wanted to share this with you guys just to let you know what we're doing. This is these are just some before and after photos of one house we worked on. As part of this, we always have a VIP tour. I think we had 4 or 5 legislators that came down this year. One of them was the person that was kind of instrumental in getting us some additional state funding this year. So in addition to being able to help a whole bunch of people, it also helps keep us on the radar of our state legislators and our division and department directors and things like that. We got a lot of really good feedback from them, and really got a lot of good feedback from the residents and from all these kids that came down to help us out. So thank you guys. Thank you guys for the agencies that sent extra people down to help. We really, really appreciate that. And we'll continue to do that into the future. So can you guys hear me? If one or two of you would weigh in, please.
Yes.
Awesome. And everybody's able to see the screen, I hope. So today, here's the agenda. I'll go through a couple, this training opportunity, a couple of new business items, and then the main topic of today's meeting is I'm going to go through and do kind of a monitoring review. I'll show you just a reminder of some of the stuff that we found last year, and talk about our monitoring coming up this year. So that'll be the meat of the meeting. So training opportunities, the one that I've got on the screen, we put a BPI Energy Auditor class on the calendar for September 16th through the 19th. I think we have 2 of the 4 seats filled. So right now, the next 2 people to get me their approval letter from BPI will get the seats. So if you need any help on that, talk to your coordinator. You can reach out to me. We have I've got a form that'll kind of help walk you through the process. So is anybody aware of any other training opportunities that the group should know about? If you ever are, if you'll send them to me or Wade or Dalton, we can kind of share them with everybody. So send them our way. Our next technical meeting will be August 6th. That'll be the first Tuesday in August. In a second, I'll go through and just show you where we landed for the year on production. But I wanted to talk about these last 2 items really quickly. Yesterday was July 1st. Yesterday was the effective date for our new fuel costs, and also for some of the insulation measures. The life of those measures was extended. We had a meeting last month where at least one person from every agency attended, and we set up those new measure lives and the new fuel costs for the year in a setup library. So just a reminder, you should be using those new setup libraries as of yesterday. Any audits that you started yesterday, make sure that you're using those libraries. Anybody have any questions on that, or is anybody having any troubles with that I could help with? All right. If you are, just let me know. I'm happy to help. Want to make sure that we get the year started off right with the correct settings in our audit tools. And then also the new worst case draft form. We pushed that out 2 months ago. Dalton reviewed it during this meeting last month. And at least from the meeting and from the lack of emails that we've received, it sounds like the form is working well. So that form, we'd like to make it effective as of yesterday. So I guess first and foremost, how do people feel about that? Have you guys had enough time to use the form, and is it working? Anybody have any feedback on that?
So far, it's great.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. When I send out email today, I'll include a copy of that form in today's email because we do not have it on our website yet. It should appear on our website in the next couple of weeks, I hope. But the effective date on that, I'd like to make it July 1, just so basically everything that you're doing this year, please start using that new form. That's auditors, that's QCIs, that's any of your field guys that are doing a worst case draft test during production. Please make sure everybody's using that form. So any concerns or questions on that? All right, I'll move into production, and just the same charts we've been looking at all year, but this does show us where we landed at the end of the year. On the left-hand side of the screen, again, the light green is, this was the sum of every agency's goals for each month, and then the dark green is what we actually did. So in June, we had a combined goal to have 50 units completed, and the program was able to complete 49. So we almost met the goal for the month, and then over on the right-hand side, this is just the running total, so the combined goal, added upon itself every month. So our goal, and really our production, our production goal for the entire year was 548 units, and the program completed 422. There were, if I can find my notes, I wanted to just give props to a couple agencies. Maybe I can't find them. There were 3 or 4 agencies that met their monthly goal during the month of June. I know UBAG was one of them. Salt Lake or Yucca was one of them. I can't remember, and I can't get my computer to show me my notes. There were 2 other agencies. So to those agencies that met their goals last month, thank you guys so much for all that you did. We really appreciate your hard work. I am a little sad to report that as of the numbers we have right now, it looks like there was not a single agency that met their goal for the year. Everybody fell short by at least a couple of units. So that is something we will be working on during the coming months. We've got to figure out a way to meet our production goals. And these production numbers are just the weatherization units. This next screen gives us a little bit better idea of where we're at with crisis, and then this total clients served. Again, on this screen, the lighter color in the background, I'm showing just a 4-year average so that we can kind of get a feel for what we normally do. So the light blue here, this represents the number of crisis clients that we normally serve, or at least the number of crisis completions that we turn in. And the dark blue represents the number of crisis completions that were turned in each month this year. So in June, normally on average, we would see about 37 crisis completions, and we received 50. Some of that, again, is that we have started reporting crises a little bit differently. We have a separate BWR for cooling and water heaters and heating. So this does not necessarily represent how many clients served, but actually the number of total completions that were turned in. Over on the right is a representation of total clients served. This includes weatherization clients and all of our crisis clients, and it's an unduplicated count. So if the client showed up on 1 or 4 BWRs, we're only counting them 1 time. And so this shows on average we've been serving in the month of June about 77 new clients, and this year we served 81. So a little slightly higher than average here, but overall you can see we're kind of trending on par with what we normally do. So anyway, but yeah, we're going to have some discussions about that. If you guys are aware of anything, you know, when we have those discussions, I know we'll be talking about it in coordinator meeting, but reach out to us. Let us know what your ideas are on what we can do to improve our production and get our numbers up a bit. So anybody have any questions or anything they want to talk about here before we move on? Okay. So technical monitoring, most of what I've got today is actually just based on energy audit stuff. Dalton, as I mentioned, he had a ton of stuff to do for the group camp as well. If you're on, Dalton, if you have anything to add, feel free to interrupt as I'm going through this. But anyway, a lot of the stuff you'll see is energy auditor stuff. But if you're a QCI, pay attention, because as a QCI, remember that you need to be aware of where we're at. You need to be reviewing all of the energy audits as part of your QCI. So a lot of what you'll see here really does pertain to what you're doing. If you're a field technician, pay attention, because you'll notice that the auditors are asking for very specific things based on what we talk about here today. So I think this is pertinent to everybody who is on the call. If you have questions about what I'm going over or comments, feel free to interrupt or write something in the chat. I'll try to keep an eye on that and answer any questions you have, or give any more information that, you know, if I'm not explaining stuff well enough. But anyway, on the screen I have our 2019 technical monitoring schedule. This is the schedule where this last year Dalton and I came out at the same time. That worked well for us. We plan to do it again. If it didn't work well for you, let us know. But this is the schedule that we have so far. In the past, we had a calendar on our website. With our new website, I think the calendar has disappeared. So make sure and write these dates down. We will send you guys a letter about, 2 to 4 weeks before we're coming to your agency to remind you that we're coming. But please put these on your calendars. If these dates do not work for you, if you have any major conflicts, please let us know. Our schedules are already filling up for the entire year, so the sooner you can let us know, the more likely it is we'll be able to make an adjustment. But anyway, that's the schedule. Again, Dalton and I will be out at the same time. And we'll be doing the energy auditor and production and QCI monitoring during those dates. And we will be looking back. We always leave the door open to where we can look back 12 months. We will definitely be looking back at the stuff that was drug across the finish line here in May and June. So, you know, be aware of that, but that is the period that we will be monitoring. So any questions on that? All right. Okay, so for this next, really for the rest of the meeting here, I want to go over my energy audit monitoring results. For those of you who have seen my process, this is just a picture of the process on the screen. I have a scorecard that I use. I use the same scorecard at every agency. And then the information you can see on the screen, this is actually just a screenshot of the scorecard for the entire program. I put together the score of every agency and looked at the entire program as a whole so that we could see where we've done well and where we have room for improvement. So there's a fair amount of data. As I've gone through the process, I try to treat every single agency the same. I try to look at, based on risk and based on how often things are occurring at agencies, I try to categorize things as, whether they're a finding, an area of concern, or an opportunity for improvement, or a commendable item. Try to do that the same, but I am human. I am going to look at stuff slightly different, 6 months down the road when I'm monitoring that next agency. So, but I've tried to keep it very uniform so that this information is valuable and valid. So anyway, there's a lot of information. I'm going to kind of click through some of this stuff. If I'm going too fast or if you want more info, just raise your hand. Let me know. So first I want to start with the commendable items. This first item I think is amazing. It basically, as I go through and measure how well we're doing on all of our audits, it's an accuracy score. If an audit is, if they forgot to do something that they were supposed to do on audit, then I basically just say it was, they missed a point or two, and it's not 100% accurate. So our total accuracy score for the entire program moved up 4% this last year. In 2016, we started out with an 82% accuracy rate. We moved that 2% in 2017 to 84, and we moved it 4% in 2018. I don't ever expect that we will get to 100% accuracy because we're all humans. We are going to make errors, and there's plenty of room for errors. We have a ton of things we have to do as part of our jobs, but I would love to get into the 90s. I would love to see our program there, but even a 4% move is huge. It represents everybody doing a ton of things to do their job a little better. So thank you guys so very much for everything you've done this last year, and please continue to do what you can to improve. Some of the things that I found were listed below. This first one, we had a 342% improvement in documenting combustion air calculations. Now, 342% sounds high. All that means is we started out low and we made a big jump there. We were at probably 15 or 20%, and now we're up into the 60% or something accuracy, which based on where we started, it was 342 times better than what we were doing before. So. But yeah, we had a huge improvement documenting our combustion air calculations. One of the issues there is most people don't have that on a form where they remember to put it down. So if you don't have that on your form and you have the ability to adjust your forms, make sure you're adding that. The next one, 65% improvement in identifying and testing duct leakage outside the envelope. I'll come back to this one later, but thank you. There was some major improvement there. I know we still have some room to go. 50% improvement entering windows and doors accurately. 40% improvement in insulating duct outside the envelope. 23% improvement evaluating our baseloads, so refrigerators, water heaters, and what am I forgetting? Lighting. 21% improvement ensuring all combustion appliances are tested, and a 20% improvement ensuring the audit represents all the work that we've done on the home. So all of these things added up to getting us, a big improvement in our total accuracy score. So thank you guys for that. It's really important. Our goal is really to be audit ready. And audit ready, by audit ready, we mean that if a federal auditor came out, that our program is ready, and we will, they're going to find a few things, but we will come out shining. We will be an example for the nation in our weatherization efforts. So that's why we want to be as accurate as we possibly can. Anybody have any questions on these commendable items before I move on? All right. Okay, the next little bit, these are not pervasive items. These were like one-off things that ended up becoming either a finding or an area of concern. And I want to share them with the group as a cautionary tale. Just, if there's any risk of this happening at your agency, do something today to prevent that from happening is all. So across the whole program, there were only 2 findings. The first one was that, and you do not have to, you don't have to say anything to incriminate yourselves. I'm not sharing which agencies did any of these things. Again, just think about what's going on at your agency and make sure that you guys you have the training that you need, you have the processes that you need to prevent these things from happening. So one agency did not lead test any windows on a home that needed lead testing, but they replaced 14 windows. So those of you who have your lead inspector certifications know that you have to lead test every window that is replaced on a home that was built before 1978. And it's not, you cannot test one window and say there was no lead found, therefore we can replace all of these. Every single window that you replace must be lead tested before you replace it. This was a finding because of the risk to the program. It's a health risk to the occupants, it's a health risk to the technicians, and so it becomes very serious very quickly, even though it was just one instance. So make sure that you have good processes to prevent that from happening. The second finding was an agency had multiple jobs where they had no pre-weatherization combustion tapes in the file. I do not remember the details of this. It might have been that they had an instrument that was being calibrated or some other technical difficulty, but this became a finding for a couple of reasons. First off, it is a big risk to the program because, again, it's a safety issue for clients and technicians. But also this was something that was systemic and it had not been corrected from the prior year. So if anything ever becomes a finding, it's usually it has a big risk to the program or it's something that was pointed out in prior years and has not yet been corrected, or a combination of both. The findings from the audit and from production, anytime we find a finding, that ends up in front of your director. So do everything you can to make sure that we don't have any findings. But the findings end up in front of the directors. Area of concerns typically do not, and then opportunities for improvement, those usually go to just coordinators and auditors. So anyway, so those were the two findings that I found during the audit monitoring. I had 10 areas of concern that I wanted to share with you. Again, these were not necessarily pervasive, but they were something that I found at one agency, or in a couple cases found them at two agencies, and want to share. So first one, an agency used a visit where the client was not home as the work start date to avoid having to make the client reapply to the weatherization program. And while their intentions were good, my question to this agency was just simply, why would you put your agency at risk so that you don't have to inconvenience one of your clients? And really, that's a question you want to, make sure you're thinking about. Like, I realize how difficult it is to get some of the clients back in to go through the process. I realize sometimes waiting lists are short, but don't ever put your agency at risk over something like this, where it's a phone call to a client saying, sorry, your income qualifications have expired. I need you to come back in before we can get started working. So make sure that you guys are doing things right. Don't try to sidestep stuff. The second one, an agency used the wrong setup library on multiple jobs. So I just mentioned that we have new setup libraries we're supposed to be using. If you don't understand which library you're supposed to be using and you need additional training on that, just give me a call. I'm happy to help in any way I can. But make sure, and I also realize how simple it is, or easy it is, to accidentally grab the wrong one. It happens a lot. So just make sure that you're double checking that when you're running audits. QCIs, make sure you're checking that when you're reviewing audits, so we know we're running these audits based on the right setup libraries. This became an area of concern because it was systemic and it was reoccurring from the prior year. So I think under normal circumstances, it probably would have just started out as a opportunity for improvement, which it did, and then it got elevated because it wasn't corrected. The third item, an agency was not including written air sealing strategies in their audit files. That's required to be in every file. I think we may talk about that again in a few minutes. Fourth item, an agency was not evaluating refrigerators on homes where the existing fridge was larger than 21 cubic feet. And the reasoning was pretty sound. They'd found that most of the time when the fridges got larger than 21 cubic feet, the kilowatt per hours didn't qualify for some of the rebates and usually didn't pay back on the audit. But as we reviewed it, we did find there were a few instances where the refrigerators, even though they were larger, did have a payback, and the client was entitled to a refrigerator. So make sure you're evaluating the refrigerators on every home. The rule that I've put in the guidelines is to evaluate the primary refrigerator on every home. And even if it's brand new, just put the numbers in the audit, and then you have documentation showing that it didn't pay back. And then there's no question about it, and we're audit ready. So anyway, item number 5, an agency conducted depressurization blower door tests, pre-weatherization and post-weatherization in a home that had vermiculite in the attic. So this is one to be really careful about. I feel like we have really good systems to keep track of when there's lead on a home and to communicate that to everybody who's going to touch that lead. We need to have the same system set up when there's vermiculite in a home. We need to make sure everybody that's going to touch that home is aware of it. We need to make sure that the QCI knows not to run a blower door depressurization. They need to either pressurize or not do a blower door at all. But anyway, if you don't have good systems to identify vermiculite before you're running your blower doors, make some adjustments, talk as a team, figure out what's going to work best for your agency. Number 6, agencies installed an ASHRAE fan that was not necessary based on the post-weatherization blower door. This one is a bit of a risk to the program, and I think if we were audited today, they would be looking very closely at this because they're talking about it a lot right now at the federal level. They are very aware of how much this ASHRAE standard is costing the program, and they are looking closely to make sure that we're only spending the money on an ASHRAE fan when we need to spend it. So keep an eye on that. If you are installing ASHRAE fans as part of the process, if you're doing that before you've done all your air sealing and before you get your final blower door, be aware of the risk that you're putting on your program. I realize it doesn't make a lot of sense to wait until the end and then send somebody out to install the ASHRAE fan. I know some of you guys are using some common sense there and trying to figure out ways to do that a little more efficiently, but be aware of the risk you're taking on your program. If you ever do run into an issue where you have an ASHRAE fan that should not have been installed, in this case, we ask the agency to pay back the ASHRAE fan because that's the only choice we have. So if you can correct the item before we come across it, it's way better. So, and if I can help in any way, call me. You know, if I can help you before I'm out monitoring, it also fares way better. So, if I'm not mistaken, the agency came up with a really good solution to this problem. In this case, they went out and did more air sealing, and they were able to get the home tight enough to where the ASHRAE fan was now required. It was amazing how good they got at air sealing when it became a priority, which tells me I know we can improve on our air sealing. But I also really I thought that the solution was a really good one because then they didn't have to pay back the ASHRAE fan. So, but watch that closely. Make sure you guys are aware of the risk there. Number 7, one agency's XRF reports did not include the room in the description of test locations. And this one is one to watch, especially you guys, if you guys have your lead certification, make sure that you're not taking any shortcuts. In that class, they took a lot of time, at least the one that I attended, they took a lot of time to show how to systematically test and document a house. Part of that documentation is writing down which room you did the test in. When I'm looking at an audit, the question that I'm asking about lead testing is, were all of the surfaces that would be disturbed or could be disturbed lead tested. And when it comes to our program, lead testing, we're following the EPA guidelines, which means you're going to lead test every window and every door that will be replaced. And in some instances, you're going to need to lead test wall surfaces and ceiling surfaces if you're going to disturb a lot of the paint. So I feel like we can do a pretty simplified lead test, but make sure when you're doing those, like if all the lead test says is a window, I have no idea if you tested all of the necessary windows. So make sure that those descriptions are clear and complete. Number 8 also has to do with lead. So 2 agencies had XRF reports that did not include pre and post calibration tests. Again, lead inspectors, the book they gave you during your class in Chapter 5, it talks about how you have to include your pre and post calibration in your lead testing. Otherwise, your results are, I can't remember the term they used. Basically, they're useless, though, because you have no evidence that the XRF was calibrated properly. So without your pre and post calibration, they don't mean anything. So make sure those are included. Number 9, 2 agencies had worst case draft tests that were not completely filled out or they were left blank in the file, and it was a reoccurring issue from the prior year. So it got elevated from an opportunity to improve to now it's an area of concern. We want to make sure that you're doing something about it so that it doesn't become a finding. And then number 10, 1 agency did not request a required SHPO review on 1 house. SHPO is one I feel like we don't talk about very much. If you don't understand SHPO, call me, send me an email. I'll spend a few minutes with you. It's really not that complex. In most cases, please don't apply for a SHPO review unless we need it, because we don't want to burden our state historical preservation office any more than we need to. But in the rare instance when we actually do need a SHPO review, you need to know enough about what you're doing to make sure that you actually apply for that review. So watch that one and be careful. That one was probably an area of concern basically because of the risk to the program. We want to make sure we're complying with our SHPO requirements. So those were areas of concern. Again, these were all the cautionary tales. I have for the next or for the last part of the meeting, I have a bunch of things that I want to focus on where we have some room to improve in the program. But before I get into that, does anybody have any questions about these areas of concern? I guess I better take a minute to look at the chat too and see what we've got here. Okay, so somebody was asking about there was the one house where they replaced windows and they were not lead tested. They were asking if the windows were treated as lead positive as part of that process, or if they replaced them and they did not have lead. So to the second part of that question, we have no idea if whatever they replaced had lead or not, because there was no lead test that was ever conducted. The first part of that was he's asking, were the windows treated as lead positive? And I actually can't answer that right now. I don't know. Usually that is something I'm always going to check on. But remember, when I'm out monitoring you, I am just as fallible as the rest of you. I'm going to make mistakes. So if I ever do something like this to you, don't be afraid to ask this question. Say, well, you know, Matt, yeah, we forgot to lead test it, but we did actually treat every one of those windows as if they had lead, and here's all the photos to do that. You know, so yeah, let me know when stuff like that happens. As far as efficiency and cost to your program, though, if you're replacing 14 windows, it would be way more efficient and cost-effective to lead test those windows and then find out if you actually have to go to the expense of treating them as lead safe or doing lead safe work.
Matt?
Yeah.
So if you test one window and it tests positive for lead and the rest of the windows are all similar, you don't need to test them all. You can just assume that all of them are lead, correct?
That is correct, yes. And again, factor in efficiency and stuff like that. But yeah, That is exactly what they taught us in the class. You can, if you find lead on one window and all of the rest are similar, yes, you can treat them all as though they have lead, and you can do lead safe work on them. That's sufficient evidence. But the flip side, or the opposite of that, is not true. If you find one window that does not have lead and all the rest are the same, you cannot treat all the rest as though they don't have lead. You have to go and lead test all of them. So is that is what you guys got out of the class, I hope?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that. Anyway, any other questions on any of these before I move on? All right, and thank you for the questions too. Sometimes it feels like I'm talking to an empty room because it's so quiet, but I realize that's just the nature of a webinar. So, all right, so these are the 11 areas of focus, and I realize 11 are a lot, but I feel like if we talk about these a few times during the year, we'll do some additional training on some of them, and we want to raise the bar a little bit. I don't expect that we'll get 100% accuracy on all of these, but if each of you are aware of them and you're trying a little harder, then our program is going to get that much better over the year. So these 11, the way that I picked these 11, these were the areas where we had at least a 20% error rate across the whole program, and that there were errors made by at least 5 agencies or more. So these are things that the majority of you have room to improve upon. Now, one agency might have made 1 error and another agency might have made 5 errors, so it's just the average error rate was 20% or greater, and then there was at least 1 or more errors made by 5 or more agencies. Hopefully that makes sense. With the exception of one of these only had an error rate of 18%, the rest of them were all above 20, so we'll talk about that one first. And then, so each of these slides in the upper right corner here, I've actually put the error rate for the last 3 years because we've been tracking that, so you can kind of see what we're doing. So on this one, we had a 70% error rate. We brought that up to 88%, and then it dropped back down to 82. So I feel like I know we've done better in the past, so I know we have some room to improve there. But this one was, and you'll see this on every slide, so if you want to kind of keep an eye on that as I'm going through. So number 11, post-weatherization heating and cooling errors on audit. 18% of the audits at 5 agencies had the post-weatherization heating or cooling, that tab inside the audit was not, well, sorry, I'm saying this wrong. Post-weatherization heating or cooling was not accurately represented on the audit. And so just as a reminder to everybody, the rule is regardless of whether you're doing heating or cooling as with your LIHEAP money or a crisis money, if it is done during the same period of time that you're doing the weatherization, you have to represent whatever's going to be in there post-weatherization. So if you know during the weatherization process you're going to be swapping out that 80% furnace with a 95% furnace, when you run the audit, you need to show a 95% furnace on the audit. That way the audit knows that when it's calculating the cost effectiveness of insulating the attic, it's basing that off of that 95% furnace that's going to be in the home when you're done. So as I wrote down here, this means the energy savings of all the ECMs was not accurately calculated, and it places agencies at risk for disallowed costs. So this is an area where it actually dropped by 6% last year, and so let's keep an eye on that. And again, on all of these, if you need additional training, if you don't clearly understand it, reach out to me. Some of these we will actually have some technical meetings or some other trainings on throughout the year, so we can get these numbers up a little bit. Questions on this one? All right, number 10, and I'm going just in decreasing order. So that one was 18%, and then this number will start to climb, and when we get to the bottom, that'll be where we had the highest error rate. So Number 10, our accuracy entering shell components on audits. 20% of the jobs at 6 agencies were missing doors, windows, attics, or foundations that were on the thermal boundary but were not entered into the audit. Right along with being very, very accurate on a lead test, you also have to be very accurate in inputting all of the thermal components of the shell of the house onto the audit. So watch that closely. QCI's, you know, spot check that when you're going through audits, and make sure that we're being as accurate as we can, especially when you get into a complex house. Take the time to make a good drawing and document that house well so that we make sure everything gets put onto the audit. We did have a 30% improvement over last year on this one, so keep it up, and we have some room to improve. So like we started out 66, 61, but we've got up to 80. We still have some room to go. So thank you guys for that. Number 9, XRF reporting. 23% of the jobs monitored and 5 agencies had missing or incomplete XRF reports in the file. We touched on it, you know, as part of the cautionary tale, but this was a pervasive enough issue across the board that it's going to be an area of focus this year. Some of these were they were actually missing just pages of the XRF report. So when you're attaching those or when you're combining your files, when you're putting those together, make sure that you have your lead inspection form, the A08 form, and then make sure that every page of the XRF report is included in that PDF or in that paper file. Some were missing data about the locations, like the rooms or the locations of the surfaces tested, and some were missing the post-calibration checks, which we've already talked about. But this one I'm concerned about because we've gotten 17% worse over the last 2 years. We started out very well, and we've seen a little bit of a decline there. So we need to be very careful, especially on XRF where it's lead. We have a risk to the program. So make sure that you're doing all you can to be as accurate as possible there. Number 8, this one is a low risk to the program, but I want to talk about it because I'm seeing some, you know, a little bit of a decline. I'm seeing some issues, and this is one where it can get you out of trouble if you have good photos. So this is a really good practice to make sure you're doing well. So 23% of the jobs monitored at 5 agencies had issues with their pre-weatherization photos. They either had no pre-weatherization photos, they were missing photos of combustion appliances and their venting systems. And then one that I see a lot, and it's not, this one I do it in my own photos all the time, but is just that the photos of the exterior walls were taken too close, which makes it difficult to comprehend the thermal boundary of the dwelling. So again, just a reminder, if you can step back a little further and make sure that when you're taking those photos, I can actually see some daylight on both sides of the house. That kind of stuff really helps. But yeah, more importantly, the photos say so much more than you can write in the files. And so good photo documentation can really resolve a lot of problems for you. Number 7, evaluating to complete the thermal boundary. This is a weird term that I've been using. If it doesn't make sense to you, all it is that energy auditors, you are required to go and collect information about the thermal boundary, and then you're going to run that information through the audit and see if there's any opportunity to improve the thermal boundary or to add insulation. So you're not necessarily required to add insulation when there is no insulation, but you are required to do the math and see if it's cost effective to add insulation. And that's what I mean by evaluating to complete the thermal boundary. So 25% of the jobs at 7 agencies had portions of the thermal boundary that were not properly evaluated. An example of this would be that we put in an attic, and the photos showed that there was, there's a picture of a tape measure and there's 5 inches of attic insulation, and they put that in there inaccurately. They put it in as 9, or they put in that there were 5, but then they did not evaluate to add any more. So there's just these minor errors. You really have to know what you're doing when you are putting that information into the audit. so that you are evaluating properly. As I've noted here, we've shown continued improvement in this area for 2 years in a row, but we still have some room to go. So thank you for all your efforts there. But again, we're at 75% accuracy, so we could make some improvements here. Number 6, documenting combustion air calculations. So again, this is one that it's currently, I don't think I've seen it, I think I've seen it on one form, like one agency has it on their field collection forms. If you don't have it on yours, take some time to add it, because that's really all it is. I know most of you guys are actually calculating combustion air. If you'll just write down the results of your calculation, that's all we're looking for. This is one that it could save us a lot of money on health and safety items. Don't forget this, that to factor that in when you're trying to figure out how to get an appliance venting, or how to deal with a CAS situation that might be depressurizing. Make sure you're calculating your combustion air in every home and documenting in the audit that you actually did that. There has been, as you can see, a drastic improvement on this, but we still have a little room to grow or to go. So 27% of the jobs did not have any evidence in the file that the auditor calculated combustion air. I have no idea if the auditor did or not, just because there was no evidence in the file. So number 5, improved air sealing. So 30% of the jobs at 5 agencies had no written air sealing strategy, or their strategy did not follow the air sealing priority list, which resulted in minimal infiltration reductions. So this is one, I feel like this is the most effective thing we can do. And we have the opportunity to improve upon this. Now, I'm focusing on a written air sealing strategy and making sure the strategy follows the priority list. I know that that does not always equate to good air sealing. We are looking for other ways to improve our air sealing. And if you guys are aware of other things that we could measure or that we could train on, let us know. But this is an indicator that if you are doing good written air sealing strategy and you're following that priority list, we've found in most cases you end up with a really good infiltration reduction. So, and thank you guys. Like, so you can see we've made drastic improvements in documenting this, and we're also seeing so we pushed our average percent of reduction up 4%. From our average in program year 2017 was 25%, and last year, and this was as of I think March, so I need to rerun this number, but as of March in program year 18 we were actually up 29%. So on average we're reducing the leakage on homes at 29%, which is awesome. I'd love to see that north of 30. So anyway, I'd love to see some improvement here, and would love feedback from you guys on any way we can help with that. So number 4 maybe these are out of order. Last one was 30%. Oh yeah, sorry, they're a little out of order. 4 was only a 25% error rate. Refrigerators and shower heads. 25% of the jobs had refrigerators or shower heads that were not evaluated for replacement. And so we haven't seen any major improvement in the last 2 years, but there is an opportunity here, a real opportunity to lower our clients' utilities through client ed and good evaluations. Refrigerators, we'd see a lot of new fridges, so it's this one I understand, but make sure that you're doing your job here, because every once in a while you're going to find a fridge that you can replace, and you're going to save that client a couple $100 a year. So we test every fridge, or we look every fridge up and put that data in and evaluate to see if there's an opportunity there. And same thing with shower heads. If you have a shower head, if you guys are not measuring your shower heads, you are missing opportunities to save the client's money. If you have a shower head that's putting out 3.5, 4 gallons per minute, you literally can save that client $100 to $150 a year by teaching them about it and replacing that shower head. If you're walking into a home and you're looking at that shower head and saying it's just a pretty chrome shower head and I don't think the client's going to want this ugly little shower head that we can replace it with, you're not doing your job right. Please let the client make that decision. Take the time to educate them and let them make the decision. They can refuse the shower head, and you can write that down in your notes, but I see too many times I see a note in there that they had you know, a massage shower head so that you didn't replace it. And what that tells me is that the client was probably never educated and never given the opportunity to choose. So make sure you're aware of how much you can save the client and that you're prepared to educate them on that and let them have that opportunity to decide. And same thing with refrigerators. Clients can refuse a refrigerator, but you know, make sure you've done your job in educating them on how much energy it can save them. So I'd love to see us move the needle on this one. Anyway, any questions on this? All right, number 3, worst case draft test documentation errors. So there was a 30% error rate on worst case draft test forms, and 6 agencies were having issues where they were either not filled out properly, well, they were not filled out properly. Some of them were entirely blank. Some of them had no written conclusion, which this is a very important part of the test. You've collected all the information, but now you have to actually document what your conclusion was based on the information you gathered. And some of them were missing technician signatures. All of these things, you know, they seem like little things, but really when I look at this, I have to think about the risk to our program based on our worst case draft testing. And so this one becomes very important that because there is a risk, we've got to document this stuff. We've got to be accurate and complete and make sure that we're filling everything out properly. So I will continue to watch this one closely. It looked like we had some improvement last year, and then we had a little bit of a decline. So let's keep an eye on that. Make sure that you're filling that out as complete as possible. So, all right, number 2, duct leakage testing. So there was no indication that the auditor evaluated for duct leakage on 45% of the jobs at 7 agencies. This one's kind of hard, again, because there's not a great place on a form somewhere to write this down. So if you don't have this on a form, add it to your forms. Make a place for it so that you remember to do it. And some of you are already doing it, but you're just not remembering to write it down. But anytime there's ductwork outside the envelope, it has to be tested for leakage. And we talked about some adjusting our standards so that you can just do some pressure pan testing. And as long as the duct is tight based on pressure pan testing, then you don't have to get out your duct blaster. I think this may be the subject of next month's training. Depending on what's going on. We'll talk about this in more detail, but I think we will clarify that standard. But make sure that you are testing your duct leakage on homes where there is ductwork outside the envelope. And then when there's not ductwork outside the envelope, make sure that you're documenting that. Again, if a federal auditor comes out and wants to go through this file, I don't know how many of the homes they'll actually visit. So if they can't determine from the file whether or not there was any duct outside the envelope, then they have an unanswered question. So we need to make sure that in our field collection forms, there's a place where we can write down that all of the duct was inside the envelope, or when it's outside, we can write down what our test results were and show how leaky or how tight the ductwork was. So as I noted here, over half of the jobs actually had ductwork outside the envelope that was not tested for leakage. We have had really good improvement here, but we still have a ways to go. So this is one that I really want to focus on because, again, duct leakage is an area where we can have a huge impact for our clients. All right, and then the number one item was our job costs by measure, or the client completion report. And that probably doesn't make a lot of sense. What it is that I'm unable to determine whether measures were cost effective on 61% of the jobs that I reviewed at 6 agencies. And so as part of my monitoring, I have to make sure we're in compliance with the federal regulations, and it's that 10 CFR 440 21D says that each measure and package of measures must be cost effective. And as I look at the audits, I have to be able to see if the measure was cost effective. And the two tools that we have right now to do that are to use either the job cost by measure report or something similar to that, or you can use the client completion report. We spent a lot of time on the client completion report and determined you do not have to use that if you have something that works more efficiently for you. I put out this job cost by measure. I know Jesse Waite has something that includes everything on this report, but just works better in his systems, and I know he shared it with some of you guys. This is something that I did not measure in 2016 or 2017, so our baseline on this is we're at 39% accuracy. We've also talked about it a lot, so I'm expecting to see this one jump up. If you guys are not using this, if you're not doing this on every file, please make sure and do that beginning now. Make sure that every file has a breakdown of the cost of each measure so we can verify that they were effective. So, any questions on any of these items? All right, I hope this was helpful. Mike, you've asked, can you make me the presenter? Do you have something you wanted to share, or is that not for me? I don't know. I can't tell. Anyway, if you have something, chime in real quick. Again, this is stuff, you know, here's a list of all of our mistakes. It is not lost on us how much improvement has been made over the this last year and the last couple of years. We really, really appreciate everybody's efforts on that. I think I had one more slide to just talk about what we want to do to, you know, just keep ourselves on a path of continuing improvement. That's really one of our main focuses. So based on these 11 areas of focus, during this next year, the state, our responsibility is to continue to provide training. This is one of those trainings. Just to talk about these areas of focus is part of that training. I actually plan on a few months from now reviewing these 11 areas of focus again in this meeting as part of our training. And then we'll pick a few of those areas of focus to do some more specific training on. And then there are a few areas where we can clarify our policy so that, you know, it's a little more black and white for you guys out there in the field to implement the program. And then the list at this side of the screen shows what the agencies will or should be doing to help with these areas of focus. The first one, and I'm asking you guys, when you're setting your goals for this year, if you have not already done that, make sure that you've included our monitoring in that process. Make sure that you go back and read through Dalton's monitoring, Brad's monitoring, my monitoring, and make sure that your goals are addressing some of those issues. And then also just each of you in your own individual circle of influence, make sure that you're doing all that you can to make these improvements so that your agency can accomplish its goals and that the program as a whole can accomplish its goals. So, all right, any questions there or any other comments? All right, well, I hope this was valuable. Thank you guys for your time. I will send out a recording for anybody who's missed it. And yeah, thank you guys. I'm excited for this year coming, you know, that we're starting. I know it's going to be a good one, and you guys are going to make it great. So thank you for all that you do. let's go ahead and end.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.